All right. What is up, everybody? Welcome to the Football Forecast, episode number 3 on August 6th, 2019. I'm your co-host, Austin Killough. I'm here with my other co-host, Steve Killough.
Hey guys, what's up?
And so that was both my headsets. All right. So episode 3. Going on our third episode now. We're having a good time with this. Third one, so third time's a charm. This one's gonna be the best one, I hope. Last week we didn't have much to talk about, but we did talk about the Hall of Fame game. That was one thing that we were kind of hyping up a little bit. I was talking about Drew Lock and things like that, and I was talking about the Broncos, playing the Falcons on that game, and things like that, just kind of hyping up the Hall of Fame game because this is the first real football game we have right now. College, NFL, whatever, the first football game that we have, and it was as interesting as anyone would have predicted. With the Broncos winning 14-10 over the Atlanta Falcons, we talked a lot last week about Drew Lock and how he would perform. And, he barely even did. He finished 7 out of 11 for 34 yards, and he really struggled that night, missing 2 open receivers deep down the field on the right sideline, and he got sacked twice. So, Drew Lock, not the best first game for Drew Lock, not the best first preseason game for Drew. But, there are a lot of preseason games, so he's got, 3 more coming? He's got 3 more games coming, so he's got a lot more time to prove himself before the regular season starts to see who's going to get that backup job or how it's going to look. So,
he's probably going to be in the 13th quarterback. This is probably just going to be more or less a year of learning for him.
Probably.
The 7-11, you can attribute that to still learning the offensive playbook, getting comfortable with it. I didn't see a lot of his performance, but 7-11, 34 yards, you have to imagine that a lot of his passes were simply screen-type passes, check-down type passes, short passes to the receivers and tight ends. So,
and that was probably, instilled in the game plan for him. Because, all the reports I read, I didn't see his gameplay either, but all the reports I read were that he missed 2 receivers downfield. Mm-hmm. And, watching what he did in college, I don't see how, if he was looking in the direction of those receivers, I don't see how he would miss them. I feel like that was kind of in his game plan and the coach's game plan for him to, the offensive scheme that night was to kind of dump it down to the running backs and, with your screens and your RPOs and stuff and let them do the work. So, I feel like that was definitely a factor. I think it was expected, though. I don't think anybody really expected Drew Lock to throw for 600 yards in the preseason game, 4 touchdowns. It didn't happen that way, and I think everybody kind of predicted that. But still, Drew Lock, didn't, barely perform, but he's got a bright future ahead of him at Denver. Joe Flacco can't be the starter forever, and he's gonna be a backup and probably a third string for a while unless he proves himself, exponentially in the next few games here, and even in the regular season games if he can, step up. But I feel that Drew Lock is probably one of these guys that's just gonna kind of float around the league. As long as he keeps performing like he has been in training camp, because they haven't seen much improvement from him in training camp. So, like we said last week, he probably will end up being one of these backup guys for a while. That takes a long time to develop. Definitely not going to be a Patrick Mahomes type guy or anything like that. So that's probably the extent of what we'll see from Drew Lock. But overall, the Hall of Fame game was not a bad performance. It was actually a decent performance by Kurt Benkert on the Falcons. Did a lot better than Matt Schaub did. That is for sure. That is 100% for sure.
Who hasn't done better than Matt Schaub has?
that is true. I think most quarterbacks, high school, JUCO, whatever, probably can do a lot better than Matt Schaub. But regardless, Kurt Benkert looked really good out there. A lot of Falcons fans were calling for him to have the backup job over Matt Schaub. So I can agree with that. I saw what he did. He looked really good. But now he's injured with a toe injury that could set him back half the regular season.
So. Well, yeah. Yeah, I mean, if he can stay healthy and keep performing like that, I'm not sure how long that toe injury is going to keep him out. But yeah, I mean, I'm sure the Falcons would much rather have him as the backup than paying a lot of money to Matt Schaub, a guy who continues to unimpress whenever he is on the field.
Yeah, I mean, just continually like a Nathan Peterman type of quarterback, just never has done anything super successful. But that's what we've seen from Bankert on the Falcons, and bright future ahead for that QB. Definitely wherever he goes, if he stays in Atlanta or ends up somewhere else, definitely a while of a career, a good career. Looking up for him, even if he stays as a backup, because he's a pretty good backup from what I saw. And so no Julio, no Sanu, no Ridley. They were not suited up at all. If you saw any of the game, you saw them all in regular clothes. They had no pads or anything. So you didn't see any of the three-headed monster out there, but we did see a lot of the running backs. We saw Ito Smith. That was something we saw. And people really liked what they saw out of Ito Smith. They definitely think we have a great replacement for Tevin Coleman on the Falcons offense there. And that's great. For the Atlanta Falcons, it's great for the Denver Broncos that they got that win. That every quarterback got to see the field and do a little bit of a show. Congratulations to the Broncos for winning the first football game that we've gotten to see since Tom Brady put the smack on the Rams. And it's been a while. I'm really excited for the season just from that game. It's gonna be cool. I like the Hall of Fame game there. That was cool. Couldn't have really asked for a better one. I think everybody kind of predicted it to go that kind of score, 14-10. But yeah, definitely a good game. All right, so moving on, more NFL news that we have this week. For any Jaguars fans watching, I know I got a lot of friends that are Jaguars fans, so I hope you guys are listening. But Jalen Ramsey said earlier this offseason that two teams he would be interested in if he were to leave the Jacksonville area would be the Tennessee Titans or the Vegas Raiders. So that's pretty interesting. Everybody in Jacksonville, loves Jalen Ramsey. This is their guy. I mean, he is the next, Dion to them. He's the prophet. This guy is the prophecy. He's somebody that can come out and score pick sixes all the time and shut down receivers. He's a lockdown corner. He's lean. He's lanky. He can get up there with the best of them. So it's crazy that he would announced two teams that he really wants to go to, and one of them being a division rival for the Jaguars. That would make some Jaguars fans very angry. So I'm very interested to see what a lot of Jags fans think about that. So if you guys are watching, go ahead and leave a comment. I'm watching. I'm sitting here looking at the chat. So go ahead and tell us what you think about that. That's pretty sad for Jags fans, but. It is pretty interesting, why he would choose these two teams, or at least I thought. That's because Ramsey actually has family in Tennessee. He grew up there. So he went to elementary school there, and he lived there for a while. And he was a Titans fan in childhood. So there you go. And also his grandmother was a Titans fan as well. That's what we're looking at there, an early case of childhood fandom when you get to the point of being able to pick what team you want to go to. When you get to that point of elite status in the NFL, that's kind of something you go back to. It's like, okay, I like this team when I was a kid. They're going to pay me, maybe I'll go here. So that's what he's looking at now. If the Jags don't pay this man the money, then that's somewhere he could end up. But also, the reason why he would choose them or the Raiders was pretty interesting to me too. So he said both of those teams would be fine because they currently hold no state income tax. So that's pretty interesting there. That's really something that he would consider, or any NFL player would consider in trying to relocate or go to a different team. So it doesn't really sound like he's interested in playing for the best contender available like the Rams or the Patriots. He's set on kind of just playing for a contract and playing for whoever he feels like playing for.
Yeah, and you mentioned about him in regards to the looking at the state income tax as being a factor in where he may look to play next year. That is actually something that is becoming more and more of a factor every year for a lot of players in their contracts, because you do have some states that do not charge a state income tax in regards to players or in general people's salaries, and some states who charge a lot of state income tax. In fact, that was an issue recently with Quentin Williams before he signed his contract with the Jets, because they were trying to defer part of his signing bonus until next year. And apparently, because he lives in Alabama now, and next year he expects to be living in New Jersey, close to where the Jets train at. New Jersey, of course, has one of the highest, has some of the highest taxes in the entire country. And if he was to have a lot of his sign bonus deferred to next year, then you have a lot of income tax coming out of that signing bonus. Whereas in Alabama, it would be significantly less. So that was the issue for him, and people wondering why it takes so long for him to get his contract signed and why he was holding out. Well, that was one of the main sticking points. And it seems like more and more over time as we get into looking at these players that are holding out, players looking for extensions and whatnot. Seems like we learn more and more all the time about these contracts, and again, that's a lot of times when these issues seem to drag on. Things such as taxes usually comes in as a big player in determining how long it takes to get some of these deals done.
Well, I mean, honestly, before this was brought up, before the whole Jalen Ramsey and state income tax thing was even brought up, I've never even seen any reports or anything like that, like that. I don't know why. I guess it's just the fact that I really, try to keep my head above, contract information, because all that stuff really just kind of gets all jumbled up in my head. And, I don't really pay a lot of attention to it unless when it causes a lot of drama and it's up there everywhere and everybody's talking about it. That's the only time when I'll really, delve into it. But do you think, like, this could cause some kind of like incentive for different teams that are outside of a state income tax? Do you think, like, is there anything that somebody in a state such as Florida that has a state income tax, do you think it would take the owners would have to do some extra work to get and recruit players and sign contracts if they have a state income tax? And like what would they have to do to get players to come there
I think there's always loopholes and things that they can do to work around some of those issues. So I think when teams are looking to draft and or sign players as free agents or whatnot, I don't think that's really much of an issue. I think these teams, general managers, coaches, whatever, I think they pretty much go after the players they really want, and they kind of let the lawyers and the agents and all that stuff work out the contract details. So I don't think that's really much consideration goes into that when these guys are looking to draft or sign players.
Yeah, I feel the same way on the player side as well. Because I would say, not every player is there trying to, get every dime out of their contract. I would say not every single player.
Not everyone, but some do.
Yeah, some of them do. Yeah, I mean, you got Le'Veon Bell and and Jalen Ramsey and players like that. They're trying to get the most out of their contract, and rightfully they should. That's their money. That's the way if they want to play. I mean, they're the ones out there, playing the sport. So it's their call. But I feel like that's something that some people could describe as like an issue that would be coming up, or like a rising issue, something we have to consider now when talking about contracts. And I'll say for certain players. But I think for most of the time, I would say for most of these players, and probably the reason why I haven't even seen much of this, is just the fact that a lot of players just don't try to juice out that much money from their contract. I mean, I know a lot do. But I feel like the majority just don't, leave it up to their lawyers when it comes to contract time.
Oh, I do, but this seems to be coming up more and more as an issue every season that passes by. And now you got the news this week about Ezekiel Elliott, and now he's holding out of Cowboys camp, and there's a lot of speculation now that his holdout could extend into the regular season. For how long, nobody knows. Of course, I don't understand why all of a sudden now, when camp's starting, he's decided that he wants to renegotiate his contract and get an extension. Well, he's had, 7 or 8 months to do that. And of course, he's probably using that as a ploy, as a lot of players do, to try to, I guess, put a sense of urgency in the team owner, Jerry Jones, and their lawyers, or whoever's responsible for actually negotiating the contract. But here you go. The Cowboys, a lot of people are high on them to start the season, and now all of a sudden they're faced with a prospect of possibly starting the season without one of their best players.
Yeah, I mean, the contract drama is exceedingly a controversial issue, and every year it seems to get worse and worse. Last year we had the Le'Veon Bell, incident, and this year I would say it's probably looking like Ezekiel Elliott. We hope it's not, going to be, bad the entire season, like it was with Bell, but we do have a situation here that could be ongoing. So every year it seems to be getting worse and worse with these contracts. Something will have to give, in the next few years. These holdouts, these are part of like an off-season, sports report now. All of these holdouts, which is not, a great thing. We don't like to see, holdouts being, the number one talked about thing in sports. The sport should be talked about instead of the contract drama and things like that. But yeah, these players, while I do agree, they should be getting their money's worth, or, not to be dramatic about it, but some of them are risking their lives on the field and, playing downs of football that could, end their whole career. Such as Ryan Shazier and, his injury, things like that happen. And, they're playing a sport where, it's dangerous and they get hit, and, they put in work. It's not just, I play 16 games a year and that's it. I go to training, I go to, I go lift, I play preseason games, I'm running routes, in the training facility, I'm going to camps, I'm doing all kinds of stuff. So, I mean, it's normal for a player to want every bit they can get out of their contract and want a better contract, but to hold out and things like that, and maybe it just comes down to ownership of a team, maybe it just comes out of disagreement and we're not seeing it like it truly is, but I still think that there's a lot more talk about contract drama than there should be, and something should really change, whether it's, in the NFLPA, something that changes there, or, something that changes in ownership. But we see a lot more of this than we should. And, yeah, it's getting kind of ridiculous at this
I agree,
point.
yeah. But, of course, again, with the camps just starting up, there's more time to talk about other things that are happening off or away from the field. And this is one of those things. But once you get close to the season starts, that's one of those things that you're hardly going to hear any discussion of. Unless somebody, unless you hear a player signing a long-term extension or something of that nature happens, during the season, you're not going to hear hardly anything about any type of contract talks or anything such as that. So
unless, Zeke would hold out the entire year like Le'Veon Bell did, which is... Yeah. That's mainly what I'm referring to. That would be awful for all of football. I mean, America's team. It would
certainly be awful for the Cowboys. I mean, it's not like the Cowboys have somebody who can step in and replace him. And whatever team play the Cowboys, I mean, Zeke Elliott is one of those players that opposing defenses have to scheme for. They have to account for. They have to put into something into a plan to try to slow down or stop him, because Dak Prescott needs a good running game to complement the Cowboys' passing game in order for him to be successful. He's not good enough to just simply put the offense on his back and just win games throwing the football. He needs a good, solid running game to complement their passing game. And without having Zeke Elliott, that's basically taken away from him, because the Cowboys aren't going to have anybody else that can step in that the defenses are going to have to worry about.
And yeah, that's not even in their scheme for, Dak to sit there and, have to pass all the time. Like, regardless if he can do it, it's not even in their scheme. So, I mean, they have to, fix this issue. This has to be something that's fixed. Zeke has to, be there for them if they want to be successful at all. Even on defense, they don't pride themselves in being able to, take the ball away super quick or get a turnover super quick or force a 3-and-out super quick. What they rely on is a lot of the running game and the short, medium passing game and the play action, deep threat occasionally to kind of chew down the clock a little bit and run out the clock and run the football and grind out the defense and make them tired. And a lot of these teams do that. The Lions used to do that heavily with their running back and their single back and tight end formations a lot. They would do that a lot. And even talking to Big Joe, I mean, we just know that from talking to Big Joe once before. But that wasn't here. That was somewhere else. Different podcast, but we see that in football a lot less than we previously were used to, but still that's the Cowboys offense. That's what they do. They're run first. I think everybody would agree with somebody like Zeke. You have to be run first now. Even with Amari Cooper, he's going to be great, and I'm sure Zeke, if he does come back, and I hope he does, is going to have to kind of split offensive yards with Amari Cooper because he's going to be a beast. And I know Amari does not want to come into Dallas and do what he did in the Raiders. He wants to prove that he's just as good as Antonio Brown. He's just as good as Julio Jones. He's just as good as everybody else, and he is. Amari Cooper is. He's one of those receivers that's just as good as everybody else. So he's not going to want to split carries or split yards with Ezekiel Elliott. So that's going to be a firepower offense. So Zeke's going to have to come back, and I'm sure they don't want to give Zeke, they don't want to shell out for Zeke when you have somebody like Amari Cooper, but that's an issue that has to be fixed, just for the betterment of football. I mean, it's America's team, and I say that with air quotes because America's team, when they don't feel like it. Nobody in America likes the Cowboys besides the Cowboys, but regardless, I hope that situation gets fixed for all of football because Ezekiel Elliott's a great player, regardless of what happens off the field or the things that he's been accused of and things like that. He's a great football player, one of the best we've seen. One of the best, if not the best, running back in the league. Yeah, that's definitely a situation that needs to be fixed. Hopefully it is, and hopefully we'll see, Zeke there week 1 for the Cowboys. So, yeah, all right, so moving on a little bit, just a couple things before we get into our little college football segment here, a little college football type thing. We got some NFL preseason news. So Ryan Fitzpatrick, Fitzmagic, will be starting Thursday for the Dolphins in their opener against the Atlanta Falcons, their preseason opener. So, I think everybody kind of expected that, and they said that. But what I am pretty interested in is the fact that he's playing at all. I think if they said he's the starter, but if they came out and said he's the actual starter and they truly believe he's going to 100% lead the team the whole year, I don't think he would be playing at all. So I do think the battle is still open. I think Rosen is still there challenging him every day, and I'm really excited to kind of watch the Dolphins preseason. There's only a few teams that I'm excited to watch in the preseason. It's definitely not the Browns because none of those guys are going to start, and everybody's like, "Oh, I can't wait to watch the Browns preseason." Well, we know none of those guys are going to start, but what we don't know in the Dolphins is who's going to look the best in the preseason because it could be Fitzmagic or Josh Rosen. We don't know what any of those guys are going to do. We've seen what they've done in training camp, but we haven't seen either of those guys playing the same team before and split drives like that. So we'll have to see what they do. That's going to be interesting to watch.
Yeah, it will. But judging from some of the Dolphins coach Brian Flores' comments, I think that they're probably leaning towards Fitzpatrick being the quarterback to start.
Yeah.
And that's just based on what we've seen out of Ryan Fitzpatrick and what we've seen out of Josh Rosen, and just trying to determine how the preseason is going to play out. Obviously, Fitzpatrick has a lot more experience. He did have some success last year, quarterback in the Buccaneers. And I'm sure, particularly with him being a first-time head coach, he's going to be a lot more comfortable having an experienced quarterback in there, at least somebody who you feel like it's going to be able to go in there and do a decent job and at least give them a chance to win. That preseason game, it's probably going to be like a lot of other teams. Fitzpatrick will come in, he'll probably play for a quarter, and I would suspect you'll probably see Rosen get most of the snaps in that preseason game, and they'll probably play whoever might be their third string quarterback for a quarter or so. But yeah, I mean, unless Rosen just totally outplays him, I think Fitzpatrick will be the starter to begin the season.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think because they've said that before, obviously, I think, I agree. Based off the sole fact that that's who they like, that's who they've said is our guy. So, yeah, I mean, I don't really disagree with the Dolphins' decision to do that and make them, make him that leading guy. But, like I said, since Fitzpatrick's playing at all in the preseason, I like the fact that, there's still a battle going on, whether or not they've said it's over. I mean, they have said, Ryan has won the job, but the battle is still open. It's not like it's closed and everybody is saying that it's closed and Ryan Fitzpatrick is going to start every game. That's not true. We don't know exactly what's going to happen yet. These guys are, two competitors is what we've been shown. So it's going to be fun to watch. These preseason Dolphin games are going to be pretty cool. So yeah, and predictably, in other news and other preseason news, Cam Newton will not be playing in the opener for the Panthers. So that's predictable. I mean, the Dolphins, you have two guys that you don't know who's going to be the QB yet. So obviously they're going to battle it out in the preseason. And Cam Newton, who's their guy, probably the best player on the Panthers squad. I could say, like, without a doubt, yes. I mean, he's a beast of a quarterback. He's strong, he's fast, and he's got everything you could want in a type of quarterback like that. Obviously, he's not going to be playing in the preseason game, especially due to his injury before in last season. So, a lot of people came out of last season not even knowing if Cam Newton was going to play this season or open up this season.
Right.
So I think it's predictable to say that he's not going to be starting.
In some sense, he is ahead of schedule on his rehab and coming back for this season. I would be surprised if he played any more than just sparingly. He's of course not going to play the first game. Probably wouldn't play the second preseason game. You may see him a little bit there in the third and fourth games just to could play a little bit and maybe shake some of the rust off, so to speak. But, they're going to be real careful with him. They know that he knows the offense. I mean, he's been the Panthers for 8 years. He knows the offense. He knows what he's got to do to get himself ready to play. So, him not participating much in the preseason game is not going to be a big deal. The main thing for the Panthers is to make sure he's healthy when the season starts and ready to go.
And to a lot of the NFC South fans, may come at a dismay, may come at a disappointment to you all, but he probably will be ready for the season. So yeah, just expect that. I know everybody was kind of expecting him or hoping that he wouldn't be able to play for a couple of games at the beginning, but he will probably like you said, he's ahead of schedule, so he'll probably be all good in the first game to go ahead and put 30 yards on the Falcons.
I mean, one thing we're hopeful of that Cam may lose some of his punk ass loser attitude
yeah,
during the off season and preseason, but that's probably not going to happen. But I'm sure he'll be ready to go when the season starts.
Yeah, I'm sure he'll be ready to go and ready to split rushing yards with Christian McCaffrey and everything. So yeah, it's gonna look really good for the Panthers, regardless of how Cam Newton acts or what he does. But yeah, I should go ahead and state we're SEC fans, so Cam, we got a lot of history with Cam, but I do like Cam. I think he's a great athlete. I think the Panthers are gonna do fairly well with him this year, but beforehand, I think in the first episode, I said, I wasn't sure if he was going to be able to play. So I've kind of ranked the Panthers as one of the worst teams in the NFL this year. But now that he looks like he's going to even play a little bit in the preseason, I'm kind of saying that he's, the Panthers are looking, decent this year, decently enough to not be the worst team in the league. And I think, with Cam Newton actually not being dead because of his shoulder injury, I think they can do, just fine this year. All right, so yeah, moving on from that, my last NFL topic for the day before we move on to some more, college football type oriented topics. So fantasy football. So I have started a fantasy football league. Nobody is watching live right now, I believe. But to those who are, um, I've started the fantasy football league. Comment wherever you're watching. I'll see it. I'll find it, and I'll send you an invite to our league. We need 6 more people, so I've started that league up. But what I wanted to talk about was I wanted to give my top 3 picks for your fantasy football draft, for who I think you should draft first in fantasy football. And if you cannot draft him first because somebody else has already drafted him, that's why I'm giving you guys 3 number 1 picks. Now, these might come at a bit of a surprise to you. Not the number 1. The number 1 I have on this list will not come at a surprise, but these other 2 will. So, number 1, obviously, Patrick Mahomes. I mean, I don't even need to give his stats because we all know what he did last year. Mahomes had 5,097 yards last year with 50 touchdowns. That's enough in and of itself. He's the number 1 guy to draft in any draft, no matter who you are, what team you're a fan of. I don't care if you're a Patriots fan. You know, Tom Brady is the greatest of all time, but you would never draft Tom Brady over Pat Mahomes this year. Why would you do that? Pat Mahomes, there's no way he is going to regress a lot after what he did. He may regress because it's how many times you see quarterbacks throw for 50 touchdowns, come back the next year and throw for 50 or more. So he may regress a little bit in that sense, but there's no way he's going to do, there's no way he's going to do any worse than the top 3. So he's guaranteed the best points that you can get in fantasy football this year. He's guaranteed as many touchdowns as you could want, as many yards as you could want. He's got the legs for it. He's got the showboat. He's great trade value if he gets injured or anything like that. He's great trade value for you. Pick up Julio Jones and I don't know, AJ Green or 2 corners or something. You could do whatever you wanted to with Pat Mahomes. Keep him on there and score like 100 points a week, whatever. He's going to do a lot for your team. So obviously he's number 1 for me. Number 2 is it may be kind of surprising, but not after I give my explanation why. So Amari Cooper he arrived in Dallas after the Week 8 trade deadline, right? And so what did he do? He completely balled out. 725 yards for 6 touchdowns and 13.7 yards per carry. He had 55 receptions in his half a season at Dallas. That is crazy. To come in at half a season when you don't know the offensive scheme, you know nothing about Dallas, never been in that environment before, America's team, with somebody like Ezekiel Elliott, that's a crazy situation to sit there and ball out and be one of the best receivers in that division. Just from coming, from somewhere completely different at the Raiders, coming all the way there to Dallas and performing, just exponentially better. I mean, because he had somebody that was targeting him. And at Dallas, he's the lone receiver. He's the one guy. He's the threat. He's the only threat through the air that can, hurt opposing teams. So obviously, he's going to be somebody you want to draft. And at the same time, I wouldn't give Julio Jones, the edge. I didn't even put him in this top 3 because, everybody's saying why, he could be the best receiver in football. Well, I mean, Julio Jones has to split receiving yards with Mohamed Sanu and Calvin Ridley. So obviously he cannot be one of the best, fantasy givers. You have to have people that will give you points every week, that will give you the most points. And Amari Cooper is the lone receiver. He's the guy that after Zeke runs, like a 3-yard run or, like a 7-yard run and you're on like 3rd and 3, he's the guy where you're going to, do like a PA post route and, a play action and Amari Cooper's going to hit you over the top for like a 76-yard touchdown. And he's the guy that's going to get you points every single week because he's the lone receiver. When you can't pass, when you can't run the ball anymore, when it's time to pass come 3rd down or 2nd down with a play action, he's the guy it's going to. It's not going to anybody else. He's the primary receiver. He's the only receiver. So it's going to go to Amari Cooper. All of those points, all those touchdowns, the yards, everything is going to go to him. So you're going to get fantasy points in return. So that is a great number 1 pick and probably a sleeper pick, honestly. If he's not your number 1, he's somebody that's going to fall a couple rounds in my opinion. And I guarantee you he's probably in the top 10 fantasy players of next year. I guarantee in the top 10. So that's why you should pick him at number 1 if I were you. You could probably get him at round 2 or whatever because he'll probably slip But that's a great pick in my opinion. I guarantee he'll be one of the leaders there. So my third would be Kenyan Drake, and I know that's really surprising, right? Because everybody's like, oh, the Dolphins are going to be the worst team in the league next year. I hate the Dolphins. But Kenyan Drake, man, Kenyan Drake is a different beast. I know I sound kind of biased here because 2 out of these 3 players are Alabama players, right? But that's not even why, because I just recognized that fact right now. And I didn't, I didn't even think about that. So Kenyan Drake, right? Kenyan Drake had almost as many receiving yards as he did rushing yards last year. 535 on the ground, 477 through the air. 9 touchdowns combined. That's crazy. That is insane in and of itself. To take an offense that has absolutely no weapons. You took a receiver that Bill Belichick found at Walmart in Danny Amendola, and you put him on the Dolphins. And then you take Kenny Stills. Don't know anything about that guy, really. You take both of those guys, you place them on a Dolphins offense with a running back from Alabama that can catch passes in the backfield just as well as he can run up the middle. And who's your leading guy? Who's your leading offensive weapon? The guy in the back, the running back that you don't expect to go, 70 yards in front of you and get past the linebackers and the safeties. He's the guy. He's their number 1 player on that entire roster, Kenyan Drake. He is insane. And along with, the new additions on their defense and, being able to take the ball and get turnovers quick and, force 3 and outs, he's going to get a lot of time to carry this year. And along with the quarterback situation, when you have a quarterback situation like Ryan Fitzpatrick and Josh Rosen, in the Dolphins scheme this year, I don't expect it to be a 45-yard bomb to Kenny Stills or Danny Amendola. I feel like the Dolphins this year are going to rely on RPOs and screens and slants and swings and things like that. And guess who that involves more than anybody else? Kenyan Drake. Kenyan Drake will catch most passes at Miami this year. So he's got to be a number 1 pick.
Yeah, in general, when you're looking at fantasy football, to me, the very first position or guys who have a certain skill set to look at the draft are running backs who get a lot of targets or catches out of the backfield.
Exactly.
Because you're looking at production and who, who's going to touch the ball more than the guy and the running back who not only is going to get his 20 or, roughly 20 carries or so, but a guy who's probably going to be targeted maybe anywhere from 5 to 8 times a game out of the backfield as well.
Exactly. And you have to make sure with somebody like Kenyan Drake, you have to draft him. I don't know if ESPN does it the same way, but on NFL Fantasy, which is what we've used every year, you have to draft Kenyan Drake as a flex. You cannot draft him as a running back.
Right.
So if you draft him as a running back, it'll only count as rushing yards, and you will have wasted a pick because he's not the best rusher in the NFL. He is, however, the best flex wide receiver and halfback in the NFL, and that's undebatable. I would say Alvin Kamara, right? I would come out and say Alvin Kamara is the best at that, but he has to.
Bell.
Le'Veon, I don't know. Le'Veon Bell is bigger, so that's why I would only say Kenyan Drake because with Alvin Kamara, you have to split, those yards with Michael Thomas, who's now, the highest paid wide receiver in the league. Is he? I don't even remember his contract.
He is now. He is now. $100 million contract. Yeah.
So obviously, I would be mad if I was the Saints owner, if I was Drew Brees, if I was a Saints fan, if the highest paid wide receiver in the NFL was getting less, touchdowns, less yards, less whatever than Alvin Kamara is. So I do not expect them to be, lopsided at all. They're going to be balanced or Michael Thomas is going to have more. So for me, Kenyan Drake fills that spot at the flex. So it was either him or Alvin Kamara this year. For me to put there in my top 3 spot because I knew I wanted to put some kind of swing out halfback there. And I had to pick Kenyan Drake just because when you look at a QB battle like this, like what's the first thing you think of? You think of like tight ends and safeties. When you see a weak quarterback, what you're always looking at is tight ends and swing routes with a safety halfback and running the ball. And that's what you're going to get with Kenyan Drake. And it just all adds up. It adds up, number one, because they have no receiver core like any other team in the league. Their receiving core is very weak compared to any other team in the league. And Kenyan Drake is just one of those players that can turn something into nothing, and they're going to be relying on him, especially with 2 quarterbacks that aren't the best of the bunch. They're going to be relying on him a lot to rush, to swing out, catch passes. to get behind the safeties for a quick touchdown. They're gonna do all kinds of things like that, and I think Kenyan Drake has to be in that number 3 spot. I think definitely he's probably the best player to get in that flex position. I would say. I don't know if ESPN does it the same way as the NFL app does it. I know the NFL fantasy app does have a flex position where it's a wide receiver and a halfback. So you would have to draft him as that one because you don't want to draft him as a halfback because he's not going to get any points for you. He's not the leading rusher in the league. You don't want to draft him as a wide receiver because he splits as many yards as he has in the air, what he does with the ground. So got to get him with the flex in that position. Hope your fantasy owner actually has a flex position, your fantasy commissioner, whoever that may be. Hopefully he has a flex position. So yeah, those are my picks for fantasy football. You guys should pick them up and get them, and tweet me once you draft them, and in front of everybody. Everybody else will probably be drafting Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady and stuff like that. But if you draft Pat Mahomes number 1, you got some smarts for real.
Yeah.
All right. So what are we looking at in college football world and Steve's topics for today?
Well, last week we were kind of looking at some, in one publication in particular, but this is the kind of time of year where you have some different publications and different sport writers and whatnot come out with their projected top 25s to start the season. Well, we actually had a poll come out since our last show with an actual top 25, and this is actually the coaches poll. Of course, there are two major polls in college football. You have the AP top 25 poll, and then you have the coaches poll. The coaches poll came out within the last week, and not really any surprises. The teams that we kind of expected would be up there among the top 10, 15 teams, whatnot. It's pretty much what they have. They got Clemson number 1. Clemson also got 59 out of the 65 first place votes. Alabama's number 2. They got the other 6 first place votes. And a lot of the teams after that are kind of about in the order that you would expect. They got Georgia at 3.
I think the most surprising thing on there is the fact that they put Oklahoma over OSU, because that's like the main thing that everybody is talking about when they see these polls is like Ohio State and Oklahoma, like who's over each other, and like that's the only thing people are talking about. So that's pretty, interesting.
Like Oklahoma 4, Ohio State 5. Personally, I was expecting that to be in reverse order. I thought Ohio State would be at 4 and Oklahoma 5. It's kind of a wash. You're talking about a preseason poll. But Ohio State, on paper, and look at what they got come back from last year, they look like a more well-balanced team. Their biggest question is going to be at quarterback. But everywhere else on the field, they seem to be in pretty decent shape. Oklahoma is probably going to have a great offense. Jalen Hurts is probably going to be in the quarterback there. They may not be as big of a scoring machine as they were this past season or past couple of years with the other quarterbacks they've had, but they should be awfully good. The question you have about Oklahoma is how good is the defense going to be? They did hire away defense coordinator from Ohio State, Alex Grinch, to be their new coordinator for defense at Oklahoma. But you got to have something to work with, too. So, we'll have to see how much improved the Oklahoma defense is going to be. But looking on the list, you got LSU at 6. I know a lot of people are kind of high on LSU. They've got an experienced quarterback coming back. They got some good running backs and receivers. They always do. Their defense should be one of the best in college football. They've got some tough games on the schedule, but it's not a super difficult schedule as like some of the other teams have. So they're at 6. You got Michigan at 7. A lot of people wondering if this is finally the year Michigan wins the Big Ten, finally gets over the hump and beats Ohio State. If they can do that, they're going to be a serious contender for the college football playoff, obviously. But they've got to get over that hump. You got Florida at 8. Personally, I think that's a little bit high for Florida. And now with the Gators, you've got some issues with their secondary. I see where they lost a cornerback this year for the year with ruptured Achilles injuries. C.J. Williams, that's the third defensive back that Florida's lost over the offseason. It looks like they're going to be counting on 3 true freshmen to come in and play cornerback this year, so that's going to be certainly a position of concern for them. I think 8's a little bit high for Florida. I thought they would be maybe a little bit further down, maybe somewhere like in the 11, 12, 13 range, but they got them at 8. Notre Dame 9, Texas at 10. Texas is probably going to be battling Oklahoma out for the Big 12 championship and berth in the college football playoff most likely. Texas A&M 11. I think that's a bit too high for Texas A&M. Yes, they look like they have a good team coming back, but they got a super difficult schedule. Not only do they have to play Georgia, they've got to play at Alabama. Well, they got Alabama at home.
Yeah.
But they got to play Georgia and they got to play at Clemson.
Yeah.
So they got to play, top 3 teams in the country on the schedule. 2 of them on the road, and
it's not Texas A&M's year for sure.
Yeah. So I think that's a bit high for them. I think they're definitely a top 20 team. But I don't think 11 is overly realistic for them. After you got Washington 12, you got Oregon 13. Penn State 14, Utah 15. Utah is a team that could end up being a surprise. They got one of the best defensive lines in college football coming back. They should have a good defense. They got a senior experienced quarterback who's pretty good, and they're in pretty decent shape at their other skill positions on offense. They could be a surprise team coming out of the Pac-12. That's the team that to keep an eye on. They've got one of the best coaches in college football, Kyle Whittingham, who always seems like he does a good job and has a good team at Utah. So that's going to be a team to keep an eye on. You got Auburn at 16. If Auburn had an experienced quarterback or a good quarterback coming into the season, they would be a lot higher. That's what's really holding them down. If it wasn't for that, let's say if they had Jarrett Stidham come back at quarterback this year, they would easily be up in the top 10 because their defense is going to be really good. They should be solid on the offensive line. A little bit of question among their skill positions on offense at running back and receiver. They got some guys there they got to look to count on, but elsewhere they seem to be in pretty good shape. But 16 is probably about right for them. Just going to have to see who's going to emerge there at quarterback and how good they're going to be able to do. After that, you got Wisconsin 17. You got UCF also at 17. They're tied for 17.
2017 national champions. Oh, yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. UCF, of course, they'll be breaking in a new quarterback. Notre Dame transfer Brandon Wimbush. It looks like he's going to be getting the job there. So I have to see how well he does. UCF, of course, is going to be trying to go for a third consecutive undefeated regular season. I don't predict that to happen, but who knows? We'll have to watch them. We won't go through the remaining top 25. No really other teams stand out. It's kind of the usual teams you might expect. You got Michigan State in there at 20. You got Syracuse in there at 22, which is only notable because Syracuse plays Clemson, third game of the season. They have played Clemson tougher than anybody else on Clemson's schedule the last 2 years. Of course, they beat them 2 years ago in Syracuse, and Clemson had come back in the fourth quarter late to beat Syracuse last season. So that will be an early season game to keep your eye on. And if there's anybody that's going to even come close to challenging Clemson, that's probably the team. But Clemson should far away win the ACC. They're obviously the best team in that conference. But that's kind of more or less it. That's kind of a quick look at how that shakes up. Of course, all the teams now have started their fall camp and getting ready for the season. One thing also of note is, of course, when you get to these fall camps, one thing that you see is you got some players that are being held out. They're still recovering from off season or last season injuries. So you see that. And we've seen some injuries happen here early on in some of these fall camps. We mentioned a moment ago, Florida lost a cornerback today for a ruptured Achilles. And it seems like a lot of these injuries are happening for teams in position where they can't really afford to lose anybody. I also see, of course, Auburn lost they had two receivers they've lost. Anthony Schwartz broke a bone in his hand. He has surgery to repair that. He's a guy they were heavily counting on. He's the fastest player on their team. A guy that they look to as a playmaker. He also helps them in the return game. And also sometimes he's used for the jet sweeps that Auburn likes to run. Mm-hmm. He's a weapon there, but he's going to be out for a while. Not sure how long at this point, but he did have surgery to repair his hand. Looks like Kelly Bryant had an injury for Missouri. Not sure how long he's going to be out. I don't think it's anything serious. Looks like he's going to miss some. Practice time. And then also too, here in the last week, we've had a couple of players from notable teams that have entered the transfer portal. These are players that were being counted on to provide depth and play a significant amount of time for their respective programs. One was Iabi Anoma, who is an outside linebacker for Alabama. He entered the transfer portal here in the last week and has already shown to be transferring to Houston. And that was a player Alabama was really counting on. If there is a a position of need as far as depth is concerned for Alabama, it is at linebacker, in particular inside linebacker, but across the board, Alabama seems to have a little bit of an issue with depth at that position. So that was somebody they were certainly hoping they would stick around and be able to play and give them that depth. He did enter the transfer portal earlier this year, then came back out of it. State of Alabama, he's in it again. Apparently he has some issues with the university, some disciplinary issues, some off the field problems. And so he's gone. He's with Houston now. And it looks like also at Georgia, they have a linebacker, Brenton Cox, who started the Sugar Bowl game for them. And he is going to be heavily counted upon to play a lot for Georgia at linebacker this year. He entered the transfer portal, I believe it was yesterday. And so it looks like he has some off-field issues there as well. They have caused him to be leaving. Some people say that he was kicked off the team. Other reports saying it was a mutual decision between the coach and player. But in any case, he is no longer at Georgia. But again, at linebacker at Georgia, that was a position where they've got some players, they got some depth, a lot of talent at that position. But here's a guy who played last year and would come back with some experience that would help them. So, but yeah. But right now, we're just kind of watching the fall camps and seeing how some different teams are shaping up, some different positional battles are shaping up for some schools. But we're just kind of keeping our eye on that and just monitoring that day to day, and as we get closer to the start of the season.
Yeah, I mean that's pretty much all we're doing. Without any football being played, it's kind of hard to scramble and find, some very analytical things to talk about. But that's why we bring you guys, some big stories and things like that. But, once the season actually starts, you're going to see about kind of like a 180, just on how we cover things. It's going to be a lot more analytical. A lot more, kind of, breaking down football instead of just, various big stories and things like that. We're gonna, talk about what we see and, big things that happen, obviously. But I think, a lot of it needs to be analysis, and we're gonna, do the best job that we can to, kind of analyze it for you guys and give you, a huge breakdown over what happened, so you guys can understand the impact of what has happened and things like that. And yeah, we just look, forward to reporting these kind of things, these kind of stories, and these events that happen during the football season. And the biggest thing that we want to do, like we always say, is we want to build a community of football fans that want to, come together and watch and, hang out and just talk football, and people that are passionate about football. And if you want to do that, then you can comment on whatever you're watching this on. And if you're watching this on YouTube, the Discord is in the description, the invite to the Discord. So if you want to join the Discord server, the link is in the description. You could join that. You can join the server. We're looking for more people to get in there because that's the number one way of how we spread information and things like that to you guys. Another way that we're going to spread a lot more information of something that I've set up today and got a lot more, kind of a lot more sizzle going on there is Instagram. And so Instagram is going to be a big way of how we spread information and news to you guys and announcements and things like that. And we're going to do that with, kind of like a weekly type thing, or probably like a daily type thing is how we're going to update Instagram. So if you want to go follow the Instagram, it is at Your Football Forecast. So it's basically just football forecast with your at the beginning, Your Football Forecast. Go follow that. You'll see a picture of me up there, and there's another picture up there, I think. We have a bio and all kinds of stuff. And we're going to try to post there daily, maybe weekly. We'll post all kinds of stuff there, clips from the videos. We'll give you, links to the videos that we make, and probably just announcements and things like that, just what we're doing. We might go live a couple times if we have time. And so that's probably going to be the extent of that. We just kind of want to grow our community a little bit and get more people in here watching and, just have a passionate fan base of people that love football, want to talk about football. And another thing is we also want to play fantasy with you guys. So you have until the 17th now to go ahead and come play fantasy football with us. I'm pretty sure it's the 17th. So if you do want to play, go ahead and just comment, and I'll send you an invite. I'll get you an invite. We want to get you in here in this league to play with because it would be really fun trying to play with our viewers. We wanted to do a whole football forecast draft. We didn't have enough time. We don't have enough people watching at this moment to kind of go out and make a whole league for our viewers, but we will invite some people to our own league. So if you want to join, go ahead and comment. I'll find you. I'll send you the invite. You can join and we'll draft. I believe it's on the 17th. I may have that wrong. Let me just double check. It's on a Saturday. So, yeah, it's on the 17th. It's at August 17th, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time is going to be our draft. We look forward to that. Hope some of you guys actually come and join because that would be fun. So I guess that's pretty much it for today's episode, unless you got anything to add before we leave off here.
No, I think that was pretty much it.
All right, thank you guys for tuning in to the Football Forecast episode 3. We look forward to seeing you guys next Tuesday, every Tuesday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. I'll see you guys.